The hidden power no one talks about. You might think staying quiet keeps you safe, that retreating into your thoughts protects you. But what if I told you that Machiavelli, one of history's most cunning strategists, believed people like you are the easiest to control? Your silence isn't strength. It's a trap. And by the time you realize it, you're already losing. Let's talk about the hidden danger of being an introvert, and how to stop being the hunted. Machiavelli's core warning. Power hates silence. Niccolo Machiavelli, the father of political realism, was obsessed with one thing: power. How to gain it, how to keep it, and how to control those who don't have it. In his iconic work, The Prince, he shared a brutal truth: if you don't assert yourself, someone else will shape your fate. To Machiavelli, silence wasn't noble. It was dangerous, a void begging to be filled. And that's where many introverts unknowingly become vulnerable. Introverts tend to process internally. They observe, reflect, and often avoid direct conflict. From the outside, this looks wise, thoughtful, calm, even mysterious. But in the brutal world of real power, the world Machiavelli described, silence doesn't signal wisdom. It signals weakness. In rooms where decisions are made, those who stay silent aren't seen as thoughtful. They're seen as agreeable, or worse, incapable. Power doesn't wait for the quiet to speak up. It simply takes control. Why being quiet is dangerous. Machiavelli argued that in power-driven environments, it's rarely the most ethical or intelligent who win. It's those who understand one thing: perception is everything. And this is where introverts often get caught off guard. They believe silence protects them. But to a Machiavellian mind, someone who thrives on influence, control, and image, silence is an opening. It's a blank slate they can shape as they please. A quiet person becomes easy to overlook, easier to manipulate, not because they lack value, but because they don't project it. No resistance, no assertion, no definition. And the most dangerous part, by the time the introvert speaks up, maybe to express frustration or finally draw a boundary, it's often too late. Their reputation has already been decided. The script about who they are was written by someone else. People respond with confusion. Why didn't you say something earlier? But the damage is already done. Because in the world of power, perception becomes reality long before the truth has a chance to speak. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Power doesn't fill silence with kindness. It fills it with control. In politics, in business, even in close relationships, silence is never neutral. The quieter you are, the more power others feel entitled to take. They define you, assign roles to you, or disregard you entirely. Unless you've shaped that perception yourself, you're at the mercy of those who will. But here's the twist. Machiavelli never praised loudness. He admired strategic communication, saying just enough to inspire fear, respect, or mystery. His warning to the quiet wasn't speak more. It was don't disappear, because in the presence of power, disappearing makes you prey. So if you're an introvert, the goal isn't to become someone you're not. It's to recognize what your silence communicates, to make sure it's a calculated presence, not a passive absence. Your silence should be a weapon, not a weakness. Machiavelli's insight into silent influence. It feels like safety. But to Machiavelli it was a dangerous illusion, a self-soothing lie that leads not to peace, but to powerlessness. He understood a brutal truth. When you step away from the arena, you may avoid conflict, but you also forfeit your influence. You dodge friction, but disappear from visibility. In Machiavelli's world, and in ours, decisions aren't made by the kindest voice, or even the best idea. They're made by the ones who stay present in the power structure, no matter how chaotic or uncomfortable it gets. Here's the trap. When introverts withdraw to stay out of it, they often believe they're being neutral. But in environments shaped by hierarchy and control, Neutrality is rarely respected. It's mistaken for indecision, weakness, or worse, silent agreement. Imagine this in a workplace. An unethical or inefficient decision is being made. You notice it. You're perceptive, intuitive, thoughtful, but you say nothing. You wait. You tell yourself they won't listen anyway. It's not worth the drama. But that silence, it becomes a statement, a silent vote, a quiet shift of power. Machiavelli would argue, you didn't avoid the game, you forfeit. And when you return, if you return, your voice carries less weight. Why? Because you've trained others not to expect your input. And worse, you've trained yourself to mistake withdrawal for safety. Even though all it brought is frustration, regret, and missed opportunity. That's why the illusion is so seductive. In the short term it feels easier, less noise, less pressure, but the long-term cost, diminished influence, limited trust, a growing bitterness from being unseen, unheard, and underused. Machiavelli believed in the economy of presence. The person who leaves the room doesn't just lose the vote, they lose the room. So if you're someone who tends to retreat at the first sign of conflict, ask yourself, what am I giving up in exchange for this comfort? Because in Machiavellian logic, comfort is often the enemy of power. And the more you withdraw, the easier it is for others to redraw the lines without you. And remember, intuition without strategy is vulnerability. Your insights are powerful, but only if you're willing to stay in the room and let them be heard. Introverts. The social cost of staying silent. You possess something rare, intuition. You notice things before they're spoken. You read between the lines. You catch micro-expressions, subtle energy shifts. The games others don't even realize they're playing. It's a silent superpower. The ability to sense the undercurrents while everyone else is distracted by the surface. But here's the truth. Intuition without strategy is just vulnerability wearing a mask. Machiavelli would say it's not enough to see the danger. You have to position yourself to outmaneuver it. Sensing manipulation doesn't protect you from being manipulated. Recognizing toxic dynamics won't stop them from pulling you under. Unless you act. This is where many intuitive introverts fall into a dangerous illusion. They believe that understanding the problem gives them power over it. But Machiavellian wisdom says otherwise. Awareness is just the beginning. Power begins when insight turns into action. Let's break this down. You might notice someone's fake charm. You might sense your manager grooming you as a future scapegoat. You might pick up on a hidden power imbalance in what appears to be a friendly conversation. But if that inner knowing never becomes outward movement, you become an open target. Your intuition becomes a private siren no one else can hear. Not even you, if you don't listen to it. Worse still, you begin to internalize helplessness. You saw it coming, you knew, and yet, you did nothing. That quiet self-betrayal chips away at your confidence, until your greatest gift becomes a burden. A whisper of truth that never leads to change. Machiavelli didn't praise passive morality. He valued calculated action, guided by foresight. To him, if you see the storm and do nothing, you're not wise. You're negligent. This doesn't mean you need to be ruthless, but it does mean you need to combine sensitivity with decisiveness. If you sense someone playing a social power game, don't just observe. Reframe the conversation. Shift the narrative. Document your instincts. Speak up strategically. Use your insight as a weapon, not a wound. Think of it like chess. If you can see 3 moves ahead, that's power. But only if you make a move. Watching your opponent without moving your own pieces? That's not strategy. That's surrender disguised as wisdom. How introverts can seize control. If you identify as an intuitive introvert, here's the truth. You already see more than most. You notice the dynamics others miss. You read the room. You sense the shift. But seeing isn't enough. Power belongs to those who move, not just those who know. If you don't turn your insights into action, someone else will turn your silence into their advantage. Here's the hard truth. The quiet person in the room, they're often the easiest to misuse. You've heard the phrase, "still waters run deep." It sounds poetic. It suggests wisdom, mystery, depth. And while that's often true, Machiavelli, the master of realpolitik, would offer a harsher interpretation. In a world ruled by power and strategy, the quiet person isn't seen as deep. They're seen as malleable, usable, controllable. To someone playing the game, silence isn't impressive. It's exploitable. Why? Because when you don't voice resistance, set clear boundaries or push back, others start filling in the blanks. They project assumptions onto you. They assign you roles you never agreed to. You become the reliable one, the person who always picks up the slack, but never asks for credit. The easy yes, who won't argue, won't escalate, won't say no. You become necessary, but invisible. Smart, but silent. Present, but passive. And here's the worst part. It's rarely out of malice. People don't misuse quiet individuals because they're cruel. They do it because it's convenient. In any group, especially in workplaces and social hierarchies, people naturally take the path of least resistance. If you don't resist, you become that path. Machiavelli understood this deeply. In The Prince, he warned, people are often used as tools by those who are bolder, not because they lack intelligence, but because they fail to project strength. Inaction, to a Machiavellian mind, is not neutrality, it's permission. Picture this. You're in a meeting. You have real concerns about a project's direction, but you stay silent. Maybe you're still processing. Maybe you don't want to seem difficult. Fair enough. But now someone else fills the silence. Their plan becomes the plan. And guess who's expected to carry it out? You. Even though you never agreed. Even though you had doubts. And when it falls apart, everyone assumes you were on board the whole time, turning social anxiety into tactical advantage. You were treated that way because you didn't say otherwise. This is the Machiavellian reality. Influence flows toward presence, not chaos, not noise, but unmistakable presence. If you're quiet, people will write your story for you. And when they do, they will put themselves at the center of it, not you. So what's the solution? Not becoming louder, but becoming more intentional. Speak with weight. Say less, but make it count. Set boundaries, even when no one's asking for them. Don't wait to be misused before you push back. Project enough strength that people hesitate before leaning on you. Because in a room full of wolves, the one who never growls is always mistaken for prey. Yes, power flows to the bold, but only to the bold who move with precision. Machiavelli didn't celebrate the loudest voice in the room. He didn't praise egos that swallowed the space. In fact, he warned against brashness without control. What he admired was calculated boldness. The kind of quiet confidence that shifts alliances, unsettles opponents, and rewrites power dynamics without ever needing to raise its voice. This is what introverts need to understand. There's a myth that if you're not loud, you'll be forgotten. That boldness belongs to the extroverted, the charismatic, the loud. Machiavelli would have laughed at that. In his writings, again and again, we find rulers, leaders, and tacticians who didn't dominate the room with personality, but who made surgical, strategic moves at exactly the right time. And that's where introverts can thrive if they choose to act. Let's break it down. Most introverts already see more than others. They absorb emotional nuance. They sense tension before it breaks. They feel the shift in power before anyone speaks. They're not impulsive. They're thinkers, observers. But here's where the danger lies. They hesitate. They see the moment, but freeze. They feel the boundary being crossed, but don't reinforce it. They know when something must be said, but overthink it until the window closes. Machiavelli's response: you don't have to act often, but when you do, act with precision. That single moment when you speak clearly, set a firm boundary, or make a strategic choice, it will carry more weight than 1,000 impulsive declarations from someone loud. That's the strength of the deliberate. When you move, people notice. When you speak, people listen. Not because you're everywhere, but because when you finally step forward, it matters. Think of it like this. A lion doesn't roar all day. It stays quiet until it's time to strike. A chess grandmaster doesn't rush. But when they move, they shift the entire board. This is the introvert's true power. Not in passivity, but in precision. Machiavelli respected those who could be feared without being frequently seen, who held their power like a blade tucked behind silence, only revealed when absolutely necessary. Quiet manipulation. The Machiavellian Playbook. Their power isn't always loud. It's in the silence behind the smile. The unspoken expectation. The influence that wraps around your decisions, without ever raising its voice. So ask yourself, where in your life are you holding back when you should be stepping forward? Where are you choosing comfort over calculated courage? And what is that silence costing you? Because while raw boldness may belong to extroverts, strategic boldness, the kind that changes rooms and reshapes outcomes, belongs to the quiet, the watchful, the ready. In the end, it's not about being loud. It's about being undeniable. Machiavellian tactics used on introverts. Machiavelli didn't just warn against silence. He explained how silence is exploited. He understood that when a person avoids confrontation, seeks harmony, and doesn't advertise their strength, they become the perfect canvas for manipulation. In today's world, introverts, especially the intuitive and empathetic ones, often fall straight into this trap. You might think staying out of the spotlight protects you, but to a Machiavellian mind, that makes you ideal prey. Let's break down 4 specific tactics, straight from the prince, used against quiet individuals. Guilt as a weapon. Manipulators love guilt, especially when dealing with someone thoughtful and self-aware. You'll hear things like, "I thought you were different. I guess I can't count on you. I just expected you to understand." This emotional blackmail works because introverts often overanalyze their impact. They'd rather take on discomfort than risk causing it. And that's what's being exploited. Not your weakness, but your conscience. False praise to lower your guard. Not all compliments are genuine. Some are strategic. "You're the only one I trust with this. You're so calm and capable. I wish others were like you." It feels good, but often it's bait. The goal to link your identity to being agreeable, helpful, or the strong one. So when you're asked to take on more something unreasonable, you'll say yes, just to keep being that person. Machiavelli would call this managing perception before action. Not evil, just effective. And if you don't see it, it works. Isolation through inclusion. This one is subtle and deadly. A manipulator might make you feel special. They share secrets, praise your insight, invite you into their inner circle, but what they're really doing is isolating you, quietly separating you from others. Teammates, friends, allies, who might offer clarity or strength. Now you're surrounded, but alone, connected, but cut off. And you don't even realize it. Weaponizing your silence. This is the most dangerous tactic of all. To the Machiavellian manipulator, your silence is not seen as thoughtfulness. It's seen as permission. If you don't object, they assume you agree. If you don't resist, they assume you're compliant. If you don't speak, they'll write your story for you. And once that narrative is set, even if it's false, you'll spend months or even years trying to undo it. The antidote. Not volume, not aggression, but intentional presence, tactical speech, clear boundaries, strategic boldness. Because in a world that rewards projection, the quiet can't afford to stay passive. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be undeniably clear. Your silence is powerful, but only when it's chosen, not assumed. Protecting yourself from being undermined. Your quiet nature doesn't make you weak. But your silence can be used against you if you're not aware. Here's the truth. Your empathy, your intuition, and your calm strength are gifts. But without awareness, they become levers tools others can pull to bend you to their will. Machiavelli didn't despise the kind or the quiet. He simply understood this. They are the easiest to shape because they rarely push back until it's too late. So ask yourself honestly, am I being respected or am I being played? Because in a world full of manipulators, good intentions aren't enough. You don't just need a kind heart, you need a sharp mind. How to defend yourself without noise. One of the most damaging beliefs introverts carry is this: if I'm not loud, I can't defend myself. But Machiavelli would disagree. In his ruthless world of strategy and subtext, the most effective forms of self-defense were never loud. They were quiet, precise, and surgical. You don't need to yell, you don't need to overpower, you just need to be undeniably firm and unpredictably smart. Here's how. Set boundaries, quietly but clearly. You don't owe explanations. You don't owe apology. You don't have to justify your no. That's the trap. When you're asked to do something you can't, or simply don't want to do, say, I won't be able to take that on. That's not something I'm available for. That doesn't align with my current priority. Say it once, calm, direct, final. Then stop talking. Over-explaining signals guilt. And manipulators smell guilt like blood in the water. A short, unapologetic no is more powerful than a loud one, full of excuses. Document everything. Introverts often prefer verbal understanding, but here's the harsh truth. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Keep records, follow up with email summaries, save written approvals, take screenshots when necessary. Why? Because silence is easy to manipulate. You may remember saying no, but if someone else denies it, and there's no proof, you lose. Machiavelli believed in controlling the narrative. Today, the narrative is in the documentation. Say less, but make it count. When you speak rarely, people listen more. That's your edge. Use it. Sharpen your words. Think in headlines, not paragraphs. Don't ramble. Don't soften your message with excessive context. You're not trying to please, you're trying to protect. Your power isn't in the volume of your voice. It's in the precision of your presence. Final thought. Your silence isn't the problem. But unguarded silence, that's dangerous. Let your stillness be a shield, not an open invitation. The game of power isn't won by being loud. It's won by being clear, sharp, and undeniably self-possessed. Psychology of strategic withdrawal. When you speak, speak with precision. Drop a line that lands. One sentence. One statement. Something that resets the room. That kind of verbal precision. It's not just communication. It's a quiet form of domination. Stay emotionally cool. Nothing frustrates a manipulator more than a person they can't read. So don't give them clues. No nervous smiles. No flinching at subtle digs. No scrambling to fill the silence. Machiavelli would tell you stay composed even if you're boiling inside, because stillness makes people uneasy. It keeps them guessing. And when they can't predict what you'll do next, they can't control you. Be unpredictable. Disrupt the pattern. If you're always the agreeable one, say no. If you're always quiet, speak. Even if it's just once, even if it's brief. Predictability is the enemy of strategy. When people can't map your next move, they stop trying to use you. You don't need to be loud to be dangerous. You just need to be disciplined and strategic. In Machiavelli's world, and in ours, survival belongs to those who master quiet control. When you learn how to defend without noise, you stop being the target and start becoming the strategist. From prey to strategist, use their game. So far, we've explored how intuitive introverts are often at risk in manipulative, Machiavellian environments. But here's the twist. Machiavelli would admire you, the very traits that make you vulnerable. Observation, reflection, empathy, restraint, are the same traits that make you unstoppable when harnessed intentionally. Introverts aren't weak. They're wired for strategy. Flip your intuition into power. You already sense what's coming. You see patterns before they form. You detect motive beneath the mask. Now the question becomes, what will you do with what you know? When you sense a power play, don't avoid it. Redirect it. When you recognize manipulation, don't retreat. Let them overplay their hand. Then calmly reveal it for what it is. Because strategists don't just react. They orchestrate, plant perception like seeds. You don't need to announce your moves, but you must be aware of what others believe you're doing. Let them underestimate you. Let them assume you're soft, or passive, or uninvolved. That illusion gives you room to operate beneath the radar, to build influence quietly, to shift power subtly. And when the moment comes, you won't need to be loud, because you'll already be in control. Your new identity as a powerful introvert. And then, when it truly counts, make one move that shifts everything. A boundary, a bold no, a refusal to play the role they assigned to you. That contrast between what they expected and what you delivered. That's power. Machiavelli called it shock through reversal. He admired those who kept their rivals off balance. Not through noise, but by being unreadable, and therefore uncontrollable. Empathy, with edges. Empathy is not weakness. It's surveillance. It allows you to see beneath people's emotional armor, to understand what motivates them, what frightens them, what makes them feel respected or ignored. But here's the shift. Don't just feel for people. Learn from them. Because once you understand their wiring, you can influence without manipulation. You can guide without control. That's emotional precision. And that's how introverts lead. Think in moves, not just feelings. Yes, stay kind. Stay thoughtful. But when it comes to power, think like a strategist. What's the move that protects your time? What's the move that reframes a toxic request? What's the move that reclaims your authority without confrontation? Machiavelli didn't say, be cold. He said, be deliberate. Stop reacting. Start influence. As long as you're reacting to what others say and do, they're running the show. But the moment you begin anticipating, planning and guiding the outcome, even quietly, the dynamic shifts. You're no longer the quiet one in the corner. You're the one everyone underestimated, until it was too late. From prey to strategist, from overlooked to untouchable, from quiet to quietly powerful. This is the Machiavellian transformation, not of becoming cruel but of becoming clear, strategic and impossible to ignore. Final words that will shift your mindset. Not cruel, not cold, but undeniably in control. You don't need to be louder. You need to be smarter. Machiavelli didn't fear the loud. He feared the quiet ones. The ones who understood the game and played it better. So the next time someone mistakes your silence for weakness, let them. Just make sure you're the one writing the ending. Subscribe and I'll show you exactly how to stay quiet, stay sharp, and stay dangerous.